Alright, let's see here. Making an adjustment, so appreciate everybody's patience while I figure out exactly how to lay this out. Having a little trouble with my, whoops, gonna get some echo there. Hold on. Fixed. Okay, so I think nobody's here yet, so that gives me a minute or two to set up. I said that I wouldn't be starting for a little while. So I'm just starting early so that I can figure out how to get this sort of maybe zoomed in a little bit more like that. I think that's a little better. It's not my ideal setup. It's not ideal, I know. But hello, Carson G. I haven't done a live stream in a while. I haven't really had time to just draw for like the channel in a little while, so I thought tonight might be a good night for that. I'm actually going to do one thing here. I'm going to give myself a more reinforced drawing area. Bear with me, I'm scooching some things around behind the scenes. Hello, watchful and harmonious subscriber. So there we go. Just trying to lay this out in a way that's sort of comfortable for myself. I think kind of like that. And well, thanks. Yeah, I miss doing these too. I've been really busy. If I'm being honest, I've been really busy with work and the channel, and I know that that isn't necessarily readily apparent to everyone, but that is basically what's going on these days. Is that I've just been working a lot, and I've been getting close to burnout, and that's not good. That's dangerous. So I forced myself to slow down a little bit, and I don't love doing that, but it's the only way to sort of keep myself engaged in the overall product, or the overall like show, just to. So yeah, I've just been slowing it down just a little bit so that I don't stop, you know. Yeah, just oh, I've got it zoomed in so much that I can't. You can't see what I'm doing here. Hold on. Looks like a few people are filtering in. Hello, Sheldon. Hello, Matthew, Ben, Iron Shell, Clay. Trying to get this wire out of the way. Bear with me. And good. It does a good job autofocusing. So, hello, Roland. Feel free, guys, to ask questions. I'm really just here to hang out and chat with y'all and do a little bit of drawing while I do that. And we'll see what happens. See if I can make anything come together. Drawing this piece for a friend of mine that we're gonna. He has a GI Joe channel that's Hooded Cobra Commander 788, and I like GI Joe, so I like his channel, and I offered to draw something for him. And this is a bad guy from the GI Joe toy line called an Alley Viper. So just trying to flesh it out a little bit, and we'll see where it goes. Hello, let's see, hello to Dr. Wolfman. The camera picks up the details better than usual. This is just, I can't, for some reason, get my regular computer to work right now. That's why you're not sort of seeing me, you know, up here. You're not seeing something like that. But the picture is better. Hopefully the sound is okay. I'm using just my iPhone. I'm just using my iPhone. Am I more excited about the Fantastic Four or the X-Men? Honestly, probably the Fantastic Four. I guess, you know, in terms of comics, I do slightly prefer the X-Men. There have been some better X-Men stories than Fantastic Four, but I don't think the Fantastic Four has really been done quite right, and I think that the Fantastic Four has a lot of potential to help the overall sort of MCU cinematic universe because they have some of the best villains. You know, Doctor Doom, Galactus. Those are the things that can really help the whole MCU. Kang the Conqueror. Well, I guess Kang is maybe more of a Avengers villain now that I think of it. But anyway, I think it could help. Let's see. Pink Gorilla Games. I think I've heard of that one, Clay. I think I've heard of that place. I don't think I've been there, though. Do you consider anime to be a style, medium, or genre? I would say medium, because a medium is yeah, it's not a genre, it's not a style. I do think that there are common stylistic traits, but genres, no. I mean, you can have, like, humor, action, horror, so, like, it can cover all the genres, and I'd call it a medium. Cool question. Yeah, Doom, Surfer, Hello Solid, Fantastic Four. Now, don't get me wrong. What could be fun to add to the MCU? I'd love to see the X-Men get worked in a cool way. I'd love to see. I'd love to see Cyclops get treated right. I like. I like Cyclops. I like Beast and Iceman and the sort of original X-Men, Professor X and Jean Grey. I like them quite a bit. And Wolverine is going to be the trickiest one, because, man, that was the best thing that the Fox movies had going for them, wasn't it? Like, they really lucked out with casting Hugh Jackman. He did just amazing. Like, maybe it was partly that he was sort of an unknown, but he did a great job, I think, as Wolverine. So it's going to be hard to imagine somebody else taking over that role, but I think that that's okay. They've done it with famous characters like James Bond plenty of times, so they can definitely do it with the X-Men. They've done it with Spider-Man, and it worked just fine. So, yeah. Alpha Flight? Yeah, Alpha Flight seems like something we'll get on Disney Plus someday. So, the channel has, even though I slowed down so far this year, just so that I avoid, burnout, the channel itself has definitely been doing very well. And most of that is thanks to my episode on Vince Coletta. Definitely would not have expected that one to blow up, but it did, and I'm grateful. It's got the channel close to basically where it was around just before October. And I think I've learned my lesson. This is part of why I'm live streaming on a second channel. It really hurt my it hurt me when I would live stream on comic tropes, because it doesn't appeal to everybody in the audience, and therefore YouTube stops sharing it with many people, and I make tremendously less money, tremendously less, like a third. So, but it's cool. I've got somewhere around like a notch over 2,000 subscribers to go, and I'll hit 100,000, where they give you a silver play button. YouTube does, and that's always been a goal. I'm not sure what my next YouTube goal is going to be. I need to make a new one. I've definitely got lots of ideas for making comic tropes episodes. I just don't know what my next sort of metric for my, a goal for myself is going to be. So I got to think about that. That's tricky to think about, like, what I want to do there. But it's an exciting challenge to be faced with. No complaints there. And what else? So that was exciting to see that episode do so well. And yeah, so I've got like a lot of good ideas for future episodes that are coming up. Very excited for that. I want to do an episode about the so-called Filipino invasion, where we've talked plenty, many channels have, about the British invasion to U.S. comics. There was also, in the 70s and 80s, something called the Filipino invasion, where we got a lot of talented artists that all came in rapid succession. And I think that would be really interesting to discuss some of these forgotten but certainly talented creators. So that's one I've got coming up in the future. I definitely will do Jim Shooter. Everybody wants me to talk about Jim Shooter. There's tons of other great creators. People want me to do, Sam Keith. That's one that's in the pipeline. So I've got a lot of episodes in the pipeline at various stages. And tonight I hope I can finish editing my current episode. We'll see. Yeah, I'm gonna go to Emerald City Comic Con. I think probably just Saturday. I think that one day will be enough for me since I'm not like vending or anything like that. So I'll go on Saturday. You know, when a relatively big comic convention is in your own backyard, I feel like you have to go. Oh, speaking of Comic Cons and stuff, though. So this past weekend, I made a decision that I was going to go up to Vancouver, Canada, which is usually about a 3-hour drive. Not that bad. Usually worth it because Vancouver is a pretty nice city. And I was going to go to something that called the Vancouver Fan Expo. I was like, okay, I haven't been to a Comic-Con in a little while. I'll go to this one that's not too far away. And unfortunately, like, none of my friends were available to go with me, so I was going to be driving up by myself. But that's okay, you know. I figured it would all be worth it. The only thing is, you know, I decided not to work on editing the episode that day. That's one thing I could have been doing. And the other thing is, I do have my local friends that had organized a D&D game that day. And that's kind of fun. I don't get tons of time to hang out with my friends and do stuff like that. So it was a tough call. You know, I was like, geez, you know, I would love to hang out with my friends, but, you know, a comic convention is a little less common. I'll go to this Vancouver Fan Expo. And all I can say is that was a huge mistake. And I'm not totally bagging on the sort of expo. I want to call it a convention, but they call it an expo. I don't want to totally like throw it down the drain. It's not that it was garbage or anything like that. It just was not worth what I went through to get there. It was kind of small. And obviously the big thing, maybe not obviously, it wasn't obvious to me until I got there. But the big thing was that they just had a lot of, you know, sort of sci-fi guests that you could pay to get autographs and photos with. And personally, I just don't have a lot of interest in doing that. The only one I would have really even considered was Bruce Campbell. I love Bruce Campbell. But I'd met him many years ago when he wrote his first book, and you know, I got a picture with him and everything, and that was fine. I don't feel like I need to get a second picture with him. That doesn't really mean much to me. He had a big line, and I'm happy for him. I just didn't have much interest in doing that. So I get up to the convention, and it takes, you know, like I say, about 3 hours. That's fine. I make a mistake, and I double paid for my parking. So that frustrated me, you know, but whatever. People make mistakes, but I looked around. There was nobody, like, it was totally automated. There was nobody to talk to. So, all right, fair enough. I messed up, and I double paid for parking. But I get in, and the convention's pretty small. And I was like, oh no. And then on top of it being small, it really had hardly anything to do with comic books, which is really what I'm mostly interested in. I don't mind some of the other, you know, collectibles and merch and guests. I don't mind that, but that's not what I went for. In the comic section and the artist alley were very small, very, very small. So I was pretty disappointed. I was, you know, after about like a little over 2 hours, I was like, yeah, I've seen like everything here there is that I'm interested in seeing, so I'm gonna take off. And oh my God, the traffic getting back over the border was a nightmare. I said that it took 3 hours to get up. It took me 6.5 hours to get home. Most of that, obviously, just sitting in a line to cross the border, the international border, for only like a mile or so. I was in there for about 4 hours. It was terrible. And I'm in a foreign country, so I don't have Wi-Fi with my network. So I couldn't like even listen to podcasts or anything in the car. I couldn't make phone calls to like family or friends to pass the time. Oh, just 4 hours of sitting in your car all by yourself. Like, what a nightmare. What a nightmare. So anyway, that was that was not a great day. Vancouver is pretty close to the border. Yes, it's a great city, just not a great day. I had a tough time. Thank you, Fallout Forever. Appreciate that. Inking your mother-in-law. Is she a soldier for Cobra, the evil enemy of GI Joe? Anyway, that's okay. Live and learn. I just, with 4 hours all by yourself and no one to talk to or nothing to really listen to, I just had all this time in my own head to just go like, boy, I wish I'd worked on my comic tropes show. I wish I'd hung out with my friends to play D&D. What was I thinking? Oh, well, live and learn. Um, I would not go that far all by myself again, just in case. Just in case. But it's all right. You make mistakes and hopefully you learn from them. But it was a tough day. It was a tough day. 4 hours just stuck in line, like 6.5 hours to get all the way home. Like once I got out of there, like the next 2 hours felt like nothing because at least I was moving, but it was still 2 more hours, and it was like about an hour to get to the border. Oh, it was a tough day, and I just didn't need that right now because I think you guys can tell I'm just like not in fighting form these days. I'm having a tough time of it lately. But don't worry, I'm taking care of myself. I'm going to work. I'm eating well. I'm drinking lots of water. Trying to get sunlight. Today was a day off, and I was really productive. I went up on the roof of my house and like laid down a bunch of chemical on the roof that helps make sure that moss doesn't form as we get close to entering spring. So that felt good to be productive like that. And then, let's see. Have you heard of Comic Tom? He does a podcast. No, I have to admit that one is new to me. Yeah, podcasts are great on long drives. I could listen to a podcast up. I didn't plan ahead and download anything. Like I say, I didn't have any signal because I was in Canada, which is another country. So there was nothing to listen to. I hadn't planned ahead properly. Let's see. I think I remember your favorite Joe is Snake Eyes, but which is your least favorite? Man, there's a lot of competition for my least favorite GI Joe because there's some pretty dumb ones mixed into the line. My least favorite Joe. I was never much of a fan of this one guy called Scoop, who was like an embedded reporter, but like working for GI Joe for some reason. That didn't quite make sense to me. Trying to think, and I didn't really care for some of the more implausible ones. Like there was a guy called Hardball that went into battle in a baseball jersey. There was a guy called Budo who went into battle in an old-fashioned suit of samurai armor. I'm like, you're just gonna get yourself shot and killed, dude. Let's see. Let's talk about comics is the best. Okay, I don't know that one either. Sorry. Let's see. I couldn't get service in Canada. That's yeah. Yeah, I remember Walter the Refrigerator Perry as a GI Joe. At least that was just sort of, like a fun sort of gimmick. It wasn't like he was in the show as like, the superstar or something like that. So I can go along with their gimmicks like Sergeant Slaughter and the Fridge. I get it. I'm going to color this drawing too. So some of these areas may seem sort of like a little like maybe confusing, like the line where I'm leaving line work, but I think it should make a lot more sense once I lay in a little bit of color. So that's my hope anyway. We shall see. Really appreciate a bunch of you guys joining me. It's obviously a smaller audience than when I would do it on Comic Tropes, the main channel, but the trade-off is that YouTube isn't going to penalize me essentially for this, because when I started live streaming this past October every day, YouTube looked at that and said, oh, this guy usually gets, at least, say, 40,000 views for an episode or something, but now he's only getting maybe 2,000 views for an episode. I was thinking of it as just, hey, it's extra content, who cares? Well, YouTube cares, because they think that that meant my audience was bored with the show that I was making, and they stopped suggesting it to anyone new, and my income from YouTube was cutting a little less than a third. So it hurt, because I'd sort of started to come to rely on a certain amount of income from YouTube, and all of a sudden it just disappeared, like almost overnight. But it's doing much better now, so that's nice. Much better. It's recovered because I just phased out the live streams on the primary channel and just stuck to it's just Comic Tropes. Anything else that I do, if I ever do an interview or something like that, for instance, I'd put it on this channel. And I know there's not much content on this channel right now, but maybe down the road there will be, and this will make more sense. If I ever wanted to do something along the lines of, say, like a podcast or something, I'd probably put it on this channel. Yeah, everything's coming back just fine now, so I'm good. No complaints. What else did I want to talk about? Let me think. It's been a minute since I've been on here. Sort of talked a little about battling burnout. Talked about that convention I went up to. I haven't. I'm a little backed up on reading new comics. I've sort of got them all in a pile for quite a while because I'm just sort of only right now having the time to read stuff that I'm specifically going to discuss on the show. So I haven't really been able to read too much new stuff. I've got a bunch of issues of things like Criminal, X-Men by Jonathan Hickman, Batman White Knight, Immortal Hulk, a few other things. Just sort of waiting for me to catch up with them. And I'm looking forward to that as soon as I get a little bit of time. What are you guys all reading? What's your if you go to the comic book store, what's the first thing you'll read if you pick it up? Because I remember when I used to read tons of comics, I would prioritize my stack. Yeah, I'll probably do an episode on Saga specifically sometime, James Stewart, because I really like it, but I'm just sort of waiting for it to get a little further along. Chip Zdarsky's Daredevil, okay, yep. What else? I haven't ever really read Adam Strange regularly, no, TARDIS Rider. I know who he is, I get his gimmick and everything, but no, I'm not an expert on Adam Strange. I'd have to read up on that if I was going to cover him in any serious level. Did I finish watching The Crisis on the Flash show? Yeah, I did. It was okay. I mean, I'll be honest, I did not have tremendous expectations because it's got a CW TV budget. There's only so much they're going to be able to accomplish with that. And I thought that they overall accomplished pretty good adaptation in a lot of ways. A couple of the episodes were stronger than others. But I had fun. Things like the cameos and stuff were fun. So, yeah, I had fun watching it. I wouldn't call it excellent, but I'd definitely say that if you watch those shows, it was pretty rewarding because they put in so many sort of cameos and Easter eggs and stuff like that. And it was overall pretty close to the to the gist of the original Crisis. It had all the key roles filled. They had to move things around a little to make Green Arrow have any real importance. Kelly Thompson's Captain Marvel run is currently really good. Oh, okay. I'll have to look into that. 80th anniversary of Hawkman. Oh, okay. Cool. Criminal. Yep. Hello, Peng. All digital. My first go-to comics are Batman and Grimm Fairy Tales. Okay. Master of Kung Fu with mention Gulasi would be great for a future Bronze Age episode. Totally agree, Ben. Totally agree. Definitely something on my radar as an option I'd love to discuss. What am I drawing? This is just a G.I. Joe villain by the name of Alley Viper. So just sort of drawing this for a friend. I volunteered to draw just a little drawing for his... what do you call it? His YouTube channel where he discusses and reviews G.I. Joe figures from the 80s. 80s into the early 90s. 80s into the early 90s. And I grew up basically loving G.I. Joe and Transformers. Those were the two things that I was really into as a kid. So I have a lot of nostalgia for that stuff. Brandon Routh looked good in his Superman outfit. I agree. He looked cool. Oh, well, thanks for checking out, Solid. Appreciate that. 80 years from 1940 this year, so as you can imagine, a lot of Golden Age characters came out then. Yeah, 80 years. Amazing. Pull the trigger and make Kingdom Come with Michael Keaton as Batman. Well, that would be fun, but I don't think WB could... oh, you're saying Warner Brothers, not like... I was thinking like WB, like the station. I was like, well, they can't afford Michael Keaton, but yeah, maybe like the movies could. I guess that's an interesting idea. I kind of like how the DC movies have just sort of like, at this point, leaned into going, yeah, whatever, there's tons of different continuities. And I think that the more they do of that, the more people understand that, like, you're going to constantly get different takes on characters like, Joker and Batman and all the rest. Just go for it. Go nuts. I think that, like, things like the Crisis on Infinite Earths, like, sort of helped cement for at least some hardcore fans that, yeah, this stuff all takes place. It's all real. It just takes place on parallel Earths, and that's their gimmick. I like that gimmick. Lets you do shows like Doom Patrol and still have it mean just as much as Flash and Supergirl and Shazam and Aquaman. Bruce Campbell for Superman. There's a documentary on He-Man. I have to admit, I wasn't super into He-Man growing up, so I don't have a lot of nostalgia for that character. A lot of my friends do. It was definitely, like, from the era where I was growing up. There was something about the cartoon that annoyed me. I don't know what it was. I did like the voice for Skeletor. That part I liked. He-Man. Something close to that, anyway. Something close to that. Yeah, I draw a little bit. I wouldn't, like, necessarily say, I'm anything great. I'm just always trying to work on improving, but I like drawing, and I usually draw, like, at least one sort of freelance, book a year, something or other, and that usually is enough to get me, like, professional credentials to get into a Comic-Con or something, so that's kind of nice. So I like to just sort of try to draw at least one thing every year. Some of my favorite stuff to do. And back in the day, I did illustrate a story in an anthology that was nominated for an Eisner. So sometimes I honestly like forget that, but I did work on an Eisner nominated book. So I'm proud of that. I think that that's a pretty big accomplishment for anyone that wants to work in comics. It's a nice award. I don't know if I was nominated for a Harvey for that book. I honestly can't remember. I might have been. Or like everybody on the book might have been. Like I don't think I specifically was called out, just to be clear. What's my job outside of YouTube? Yeah, I've mentioned it. I just no, I didn't draw comics for a living. I just draw for fun, and sometimes I'll take a job, and that keeps me busy. I don't do it for a living. I've gotten paid, but I don't do it as my... I've never done it for my major source of income. But I have a few books. The one that got nominated for an Oscar actually happens to be on this shelf to my side, so I'll just show you guys. This is the book. It was called Trickster, Native American Tales, and everything in it was written by an actual Native American, a member of a tribe, and they would tell their version of a trickster legend. This one's my story. It's about the Wampanoag people in Massachusetts. So that was several years ago, but you know, I think I like it still. I think it came out pretty well. Yeah, so that's something I drew back in the day. I think my style's changed a bit since then, but anyway, and a few other comics, but that one was one that I was proud to work on. I'm happy with how it came out, and it did win a number of awards, which is a good feeling. Aside from that in comics, you know, like, I guess, you know, the biggest thing that people would, like, understand what I'm talking about would be, you know, and I've mentioned this in an episode once or twice, I was one of the proofreaders on all of Robert Kirkman's books, so, like Walking Dead and Invincible and Tech Jacket and Wolfman, all that stuff I've helped proofread since back in the Battle Pope days. Anyway, yeah, so I love comics. I'm happy to be involved with them in any way. I've always tried to... I wouldn't say I'm great at anything, but that's just me. I'm too humble sometimes, actually. But I work on, like, every aspect, from writing to editing to penciling and inking, coloring. I think I'm pretty good at lettering, actually. I do think I'm pretty good at that. So yeah, I like comics. I try to learn a little bit of how to do everything. We spotted a giant enemy crab. Yeah, that's part of the legend of Moshup, a legend of the Wampanoag people. Involves a gigantic crab. Is the old Hellblazer material similar to the current series? I haven't read the current series, so I couldn't really say, but I do think that Hellblazer was, for a very long time, a book that you could always count on a very talented writer working on. I think that, like, the whole time that Karen Berger was running Vertigo, she made sure that there was always somebody really good on Hellblazer. But I haven't read it lately, so somebody else out there would have to hit me up with their opinion on whether it's still as good as it used to be. Or better. The suit for the movie you watching to see it. What? I don't get that. My wife letters my book. Oh, that's great, man. The Real Manos. That's great. Good lettering is such a tough skill. I made an episode about lettering because it's something that means a lot to me. A good letterer is often invisible because you don't want it to distract from the storytelling, but you have to like have it weave in such a way that it guides your eye through the page just as much as the artwork does. But it can't distract from the artwork. It just has to complement it. So quite a skill in my opinion. Good lettering. Bad lettering takes me out of a comic book faster than anything else. I can sometimes overlook not great art or bear with a story that isn't like written to the best, but bad lettering, I just know that I'm reading something and it just is, it's awful. It's a terrible experience. So I've got a lot of respect for letterers, and it's something I enjoy doing very much. Let's see here. I think towards the end of this year, I might go to the big comic convention in Brazil. That's my current plan right now, is to go to the, I'm trying to remember what it's called. It's like the Brazil, what is it? Entertainment Experience, or maybe just Comic Festival? I can't remember all of a sudden. But anyway, that's my current plan. I like to take at least one international trip every year. That's the one I'm leaning towards taking right now. Don't know if anybody else out there is planning to go or is from South America, but if so, you know, hope that I get to see you there. A little nervous about it because I don't speak Portuguese. Been trying to read up on it, and I keep getting tripped up because I keep, like, my mind reverts to the bit of Spanish that I know, but Portuguese is not Spanish. It has different rules, different words. It's got a few things in common, but just because it's one of the Romance languages, so that's tricky. We'll see what happens there. Hey, it's my pal Hooded Cobra Commander 788. He says, I'm really tired, but I wanted to stop in for a minute and say hi. Well, I appreciate it, Hoodie Coco. And for anyone curious, this piece of artwork will be up in the very near future as just title card art in one of his upcoming episodes. So definitely, if you have ever been interested at all in G.I. Joe, sort of 80s toys and stuff, I definitely recommend his channel. I find it very entertaining. He's really reignited my nostalgia for something that meant a lot to me when I was in, you know, like 3rd and 4th grade, and maybe even a little past that, actually. But yeah, like, I was way into G.I. Joe for a bunch of my childhood, and his show really treats it with respect. And 2020 is going to be a big year for G.I. Joe. We've got a movie coming out, Snake Eyes. We've got new toys that are going to be coming out this year, which is exciting because there really haven't been any for many years. And then there's like a Rob Liefeld comic book. I believe this is the 10th anniversary of G.I. Joe writer Larry Hama working on the IDW series. So he's been working on G.I. Joe as long as anybody, and I love Larry Hama as a writer. Maybe someday I'll do like an episode more about like Larry Hama's stuff on like Wolverine and stuff. But I love Larry Hama's writing. I really do. He's a guy that like broke into the industry as a penciler primarily. The second guy to draw Iron Fist, he drew it from like the second issue forward for like the first year or so. And then he started doing a lot of writing and editing, which is primarily what he's known for. But he's definitely sort of a Renaissance man that can do it all in comics, and has been working in comics since he interned with Wally Wood, or apprenticed, it maybe is the better word to say. Wally Wood, one of the greats in comics. I've talked about him here and there in a couple episodes, like episodes about Mad or episodes about like EC horror comics. But Wally Wood, huge talent, and could have been like even better known, but he had his own personal demons that he was always battling. But tremendously talented, by all accounts, very likable guy. So that's a lot. That's a lot. Gone too soon. Larry Hama has a dry sense of humor. He does. He's a funny guy, though. Ray Stevenson, who played Punisher in Warzone, appears in the second. Yeah, he also was Firefly in G.I. Joe Retaliation. But Ray Stevenson also plays other comic book characters. He was, oh, help me, the Warriors 3 in Thor, the big fat guy. Something that starts with a G. Can't think of it. Hello, Atari. What's the best comic you've read this month? Oh, ooh, tricky question. What's the best comic I've read this month? You know what? I actually really liked the most recent My Hero Academia. It has the main kids from Class A battling the kids from Class B in a school sort of contest, and it's been really exciting. The thing I like about My Hero Academia is it thinks of really clever ways for powers to be used and for powers to be used with people. And I feel like sometimes in American comics, people just start taking powers for granted, and it's just like, okay, a punch, flying around, blah blah blah, and they don't think of clever, unique ways to utilize it. One writer that I always felt did a good job at that was Rick Remender. I always felt that if you read his things on X-Force or Uncanny Avengers, that he thought of ways to make people combine their powers in new and unique ways, and I like that. I feel like you get that in the movies, just people trying to use their powers in different ways. But sometimes in the comics, it's pretty mundane and superfluous. But anyway, so that was fun. New Deadly class coming tomorrow. Yeah, there you go. What do you think about a Flash game? Volstagg. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, Ray Stevenson also plays Volstagg. Played? I don't know. Maybe he'll come back. You never know. The gods of Asgard, you never know. I think I'm going to utilize my kneaded eraser here real quick to clean up some of the underdrawing, which I don't think is showing up too well on camera, which is good, but it shows up for me, and it starts to get a little distracting as I move away from it. Yeah. Just need to get rid of a few light pencil stuff so that I can sort of clean it up and see what lines I need to keep working on. Whoops. That wasn't good. I'm a little tired. But anyway, once I finish here, I am planning to work on editing, and I'm very close to wrapping up the latest episode. So I'm hoping that. Good night, Ben. Off topic and weird question, but how do you deal with depression? Oh, man. I wish I had the perfect answer for you there, XDox. I don't have a solution. But I've made it longer than sometimes I thought that I would with it. And some of the things that help me are keeping busy, both work and socializing, just forcing myself to get out of bed. That can be the toughest thing, but you force yourself to do that much. Socializing can help. Eating well and exercise help a lot. Sunlight helps. Drinking water helps, and I have medication, so just making sure that I don't let that lapse, you know, that I get it refilled when I need to and that I stay with it. Those are all really important things. I started this channel because I'd been downsized out of a job. Like a bunch of people got laid off, and I was one of them, and I didn't expect it, you know. So I knew I needed a project until I got my next job, and so I started this channel so that like, I knew I needed to keep busy, and it has helped. It has helped. You've mentioned flaws that make a character interesting. What, in your opinion, is the best flaw for Batman to make him interesting? I guess I would say, like, you know, it depends on the writer. The one that we see the most is that his drive is like too much. He's like he's looking at the big picture and thinking of others, but he's not like thinking of himself. And honestly, like in realistic terms, he's going to get burnout. He's going to stop being able to care because he's going to deal with a prolonged period of stress for too long of a time, and that's just humanity. That like you can have willpower, but you're still going to burn out, and that would be actually a little interesting to show that, like, you know, Batman sort of, in order to keep doing what he does and do it well, just know that he has to stop sometimes and maybe be Bruce Wayne and just do something a little different. I guess that's what makes him a superhero, essentially, is that he can keep going, and unlike the rest of us, he doesn't break eventually. You know, he just keeps going. No one could realistically do that, no matter how strong their willpower is. They would face burnout because he's doing something very stressful, and he's not giving himself any breaks. It's impossible. It's literally physically impossible for any human to keep doing that. So maybe we just don't see his breaks, but I think that that would be sort of an interesting angle to address, like him forcing himself to take a break and just, you know, work on something else, like charity work or training, like in a certain skill, learning something new. He can always be moving towards his goal, but he couldn't fight crime constantly. He just couldn't. But yeah, I think that his drive is like kind of his downfall, and I think that he isolates himself from his friends and family a little too easily. And honestly, they'd probably stage some interventions for him because it would get annoying. What do you think of the new Pattinson Batsuit? Well, first of all, you can barely see it. You can only see a hint of it. I think I like what I see, but I can't quite understand the cowl yet. It was just too dark for me to really make out. But I have faith. I think I kind of like the idea of his bat symbol. It looks like, and this hasn't been confirmed, but a lot of people are speculating, it looks like he made it out of guns. Most likely, if that's the case, those are the guns that were used, or the gun that was used to kill his parents, and he's embedded it in his suit as like a constant reminder that he doesn't want this to happen to anyone else. That actually did happen in a recent comic book, in Detective Comics number 1000. There was a Jim Lee, Kevin Smith story where Batman tracks down that gun and melts it into his chest piece. It's pretty insane. My thoughts on Doomsday Clock? I did a whole episode about it. Like this year. So my thoughts are all in that episode. Those are my thoughts. The cowl looks similar to Netflix's Daredevil's. Yeah, it might be. It might be. I mean, the most important parts are basically like what covers the nose, the eyes, and then the ears. The neck and stuff doesn't matter quite as much, in my opinion. But you know, hopefully it looks good. You know what would we haven't seen yet in a movie or TV Batman live action costume is the totally opaque eyes, like where he's wearing a lens. They did do that with Daredevil, so it can obviously be done. You know, like, yeah, that Daredevil's supposed to be blind, but the actor isn't. So if they could generate something that the actor could still see through, then they should be able to develop something for Batman where his eyes are opaque. And I think that that would be a really cool look. Maybe it doesn't have to be like that 100% of the time, but if you can't see someone's eyes, that's very intimidating. There's a reason, like, some of the best monsters and killers, we can't see their eyes. You know, thinking of, like, the alien from Alien and Aliens, or Michael Myers from Halloween, Jason Voorhees. Like, we don't really see their eyes ever. There's just sort of like a black hole. The shark in Jaws, it just looks like, you know, a black hole. I think that, like, you know, totally white, opaque eyes would work in the same way. I think that that would be a very intimidating visual if you couldn't see the eyes. Now, you can't do it like 100% of the movie, probably, because we, as an audience, would want to be able to relate to an actor emoting. I get that. But I would like to see the totally opaque eyes. I think that would be cool. Hello, Graphite Grappler. I did see Joker. Didn't care for it. Didn't think it was very good, but that's me. I know a lot of people liked it. Basically, for me, I was like, I've seen this movie before. These are Martin Scorsese movies. This is either Taxi Driver and or The King of Comedy. That's just what it was, and I've seen that before, so I didn't feel like it was very original. But I'm a little bit of a snob when it comes to movies, I'll admit that. Did any of you guys see, there was like this YouTuber out there, uh, it, you might not have seen it because it's not like he's got a big following, but he flipped out after the Oscars when Parasite won over Joker. He wanted Joker to win, and he got mad, which is hilarious that someone would care about the Oscars enough to get mad about them. And he was like, Joker is about, like, poor people that society has forgotten. Like, that's the kind of movie that should win. It's like, well, clearly you didn't see Parasite, because that's exactly what that's about, and it did it 100 times better. Oh, it's a funny, funny video. I don't know the name of the YouTuber. All I can say is it's really, really funny. Like, this guy just totally loses it and is just screaming. It's very funny. If I had to choose, what would be your most favorite movie ever? Oh man, that kind of changes from time to time. What would be my favorite ever? I'm thinking. In terms of, like, something rewatchable, what do I like the most? Oh, this is so hard. Is he super racist too? I didn't watch the whole video, Fallout. I'm not surprised. The guy seemed like a total weirdo. Well, I can think of several movies that I know I love rewatching, which include things like Raiders of the Lost Ark, Back to the Future, and Ghostbusters. Really love Drunken Master 2. What else? I don't know. That's hard. All I'm thinking of, I guess, is like things that I must have grown up with my childhood loving. And these days, I keep thinking of, like, superhero movies, but even though I enjoy those, I can't necessarily call them my favorite. That's a tough question. I'd have to think about it. There's a lot of dramas that I really love and can rewatch a bunch. Oh boy, there's so many. But one I really like is Casablanca, if I'm thinking of older movies. I did see Uncut Gems. That was quite a good movie. Quite a good movie. Actually, that was one that I thought, like, probably should have gotten a few more nominations. But I also don't care that much about the Oscars. All right, so I'm going to give this guy some color. How has my depression been? Pretty bad, if I'm being honest. It hasn't been great, but I've been coping. I've been going to work, and I've been working, and I've been working on comic tropes just at a slower speed. Princess Bride? Yeah, I can understand loving Princess Bride. He said that if you win Best Foreign Film, you should be disqualified for Best Movie. Well, that doesn't make sense. Movies are nominated for tons of awards. Every Best Picture up there was also nominated for, you know, like either Best Actor or a Best Script, etc. Like, it doesn't matter if it's foreign or not. That's asinine. That's just dumb. I love movies, though. I'll definitely say that. Like I definitely watch a fair amount. When I have extra time, that's what I like to do. I'll watch just about anything, honestly. Like there's no genre that I dislike or anything, and there's yeah, I like all sorts of movies. So I'll even watch some pretty bad movies if I'm being honest. Like I'll watch, you know, things like Birdemic or The Room sometimes, or you know maybe like dumb horror movies like the Saw movies or Friday the 13th, and I like them quite a bit. I like higher brow stuff too, but I guess I just like a little bit of everything. It depends on what I'm in the mood for. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I love that one, Eric. I was actually watching what was it, Fistful of Dollars the other day, the first in that trilogy. Great movies. That trilogy is fantastic. But I think my favorite of them is Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. If Hulk fought God, who would win? Well, it would depend. If Hulk got mad about things, I guess he would win. Sorry, I'm dealing with depression. It's something I struggle with. Yeah, it's not fun, but that's okay. Your favorite movie is Beverly Hills Cop. All right, that's cool. Yeah, like I was saying, I can't think off the top of my head what's definitely like my favorite. I guess I don't tend to sit down and sort of list my favorite things. So it's actually a little bit of a tricky question. Like I know it should, like a lot of people would be like, oh, my favorite food is blank, or my favorite movie and my favorite TV show. It's just not quite how I think. So off the top of my head, like it's a stumper. I can think of like several things that I like, but I'd also sort of want to look at my actual like movie collection, almost like remind myself like what did I take the time to buy that I want to like rewatch. I'd have to think about it. I don't have a great answer. If Doomsday fought God after losing to him once, who would win? Well, obviously Doomsday. Sorry, God. That's tough. The Oscars has created a lot of confusion, and for a subtitled movie to win Best Picture, I don't see any problem with that. Favorite B movie? Godzilla, maybe? I think that, like, you could legit call Godzilla a B movie, but I love it. I think it's great. I think that there's a lot to like about it. I'm a big fan of Godzilla. That's like, I guess I haven't had time to watch it lately, but I bought the Criterion Collection Godzilla set, which is all of the movies from its Showa period, which is something close to 20 movies or something. And that's what I've been trying to make my way through. But I haven't made it very far. I legit don't give myself a lot of time for things like games or TV right now. I might go out to the movies every once in a while, but not a lot. Not a lot. I loved Shin Godzilla. That was one of my favorite in the series. That's I think honestly that's the most rewatchable. Well, actually, I have a huge weak spot for Godzilla Final Wars, where Godzilla basically just fights every monster. Um, that movie's pretty over the top, and I really like it. Can Hulk be killed? Uh, no. As of right now, like he would come back from anything eventually. He can die, but he'll reform and come back. What about the end of Game of Thrones? I was okay. Yeah, the last two seasons disappointed me. Would you ever read Power Rangers Justice League or Power Rangers TMNT? Sure, I'd read any kind of comic, really. I just wouldn't necessarily have prioritized it, but yeah, I'd definitely give it a read. Reading any good books right now? I wish I could. Excuse me. I wish I could say that I am, but no. If I'm being honest, I don't have a good book in front of me right now. Um, just got comics for comic tropes at the moment. What was the last book I was reading? I gotta think. It was probably something nonfiction. It'll bore you guys probably. I can't even remember which one it was, but I'll read a bunch of books on like politics and stuff these days. Although it really just depresses me, so I don't really want to talk about it. Comic book superhero to overpower. I don't know what that means. Have you ever seen that image Todd McFarlane teased of a Spider-Man drawing he's working on? It seems like something is going on there. No, I don't know about that, but I'd love to see Todd tackle um, Spider-Man again. That would be really great. That sounds exciting. Favorite Marvel editor in chief? I mean, I grew up when it was Jim Shooter, to be honest, and while he's done some douchey things, I think he did put a lot of Marvel comics in a good place. Uh, so it could be him. I'd have to think about it a little more. If he had better people skills, he'd probably still be like one of the top guys in the industry. So eventually I will do an episode about him, and it'll probably have some not amazing stories about him, but at the same time, like, no, I respect what he gave me, like, growing up with Marvel. And honestly, like, when Casada first took over, he had really turned a lot around about Marvel, so I think that there should be a lot of respect for that as well. It might be easy to forget these days, but, he really did do a lot for Marvel for when he first signed up with them as a editor. I haven't read any of Bendis's take on Superman, so I don't have an opinion on that one right now. What do I think about X-Man coming back home? Are we talking about the Nate version of X-Man? Because if so, I did not realize that he was coming back. That would be very interesting. I heard they've greenlit a Silver Surfer movie. I didn't hear that. Let's see. What actor do you think should play Norrin Radd's Surfer? Um, hmm. someone who's good at, like, really maintaining, like, a very stoic, still, yet compassionate presence. Nobody's jumping out to me right now as an obvious choice. Maybe it's somebody that has more theatrical experience, for instance. Somebody that's got, like, a lot of control and poise. Because he's not going to reveal a lot of emotion. The Silver Surfer isn't. Johnny Knoxville for Fear Agent? Maybe. It's an interesting idea. Billy Zane if he was younger. Okay. On your recommendation, I was going to get either Black Sad or Harrow County for a Loved One. What titles would I give as gifts? I think Blankets is a pretty good comic book. That's an intro comic. I think that, like, it would ultimately, though, very much depend on what the interests were of the person that I was giving that gift to, because maybe I'd get something more serious like Mouse, or maybe I'd get something, very silly. I'd really have to think about it. A young Keanu. I can sort of see Keanu, like, being an okay Silver Surfer. I don't dislike that idea. I still think, like, voice-wise, actually, I think he could still do it. But if it was a sort of a CG character. Maybe it's a little too sort of Southern California surfer bro voice. I don't know. But I like how it's not super, there's not, like, lots of inflection to his voice. So I sort of like that idea. I know you did Punisher once, but would you return to it and focus on writer Mike Baron? Never say never. I hadn't necessarily thought that I can't think off the top of my head what I'd want to talk about with Mike Baron, but I'm not against it. I think a more likely writer I could talk about on Punisher might be somebody like Chuck Dixon, or maybe even, like, trying to think of, like, who wrote that original Punisher miniseries right now, and it's all of a sudden it's out of my mind. But that meant a lot to me when I was a kid. I don't really like Punisher anymore, but I did when I was a kid. I don't think he's aged well I don't think he's, like, somebody that's easy to get behind anymore. Some characters don't age well. Well, thanks for watching, Blue Guy. Doug Jones could do a good surfer voice. He probably could. I mean, he already played the body once, so he probably could do the voice as well. I'm not against that at all. I think that they'd probably want to put somebody in that, like, has a box office draw, but I don't think it's necessary to get the character right. Hope that difference is clear. You know who could do a good Silver Surfer? Lakeith Stanfield. He's been in a bunch of stuff. I could see him doing a really good version as the Silver Surfer, actually. What do you guys think of that idea? Lakeith Stanfield. If you don't know him, look him up. You've probably seen him in something. Jeez, that just, like, popped into my head. Now I really like the idea. I didn't see the last Hellboy movie yet. I will at some point, because I really like Hellboy, but, it got such bad reviews that I did not feel the need to rush out and see it. It would please me if those reviews were wrong, but I don't think I came across any that were good. So I'm a little, like, wary of the movie. Yeah. Okay. So a couple people are like sort of like knowing who I'm talking about now. Lakeith Stanfield. Trust me, the dude's he's good. What was the movie he just made? Like Sorry to Bother You, I want to say, where he played a telemarketing guy. That he could do that really well. Surfer Bro voice would be cool. It would be cool if it was like sort of going for like comedy, but I don't. If you want to go for sort of like cosmic and like have the surfer make his sort of typical sort of philosophical speeches, Keanu's not bad, but I'm way more into the idea that I just thought of. Keanu sure is having a career resurgence, though. I mean, not like he ever really went away, but that dude's on top of the world these days. Like John Wick, Toy Story, new Matrix movie on the way, Bill and Ted. It's amazing. It's amazing to see like at his age that like he's still going so strong. Amazing. And he just seems like a nice guy. I don't know if he actually is, but he seems like it. Still no super chats. That's okay. I don't need a super chat. I'm doing fine, but that's okay. Don't forget Cyberpunk 2077. Oh yeah, Cyberpunk 2077. You know what? Now that I think of it, maybe I can't even get super chats because this channel's so new. Maybe you need to. I think it's so new that it can't even receive super chats. So if you guys were thinking of doing anything like that, all I can say is you could go to coffee, my coffee site, ko-fi.com/comic tropes. But don't feel obligated in any way. I'll be okay no matter what. Yeah, not monetized. Yeah, not yet. I'll be able to monetize. I think when this channel gets, I want to say 4,000 subscribers. So, it's probably got a little ways to go until that happens, and that's okay. I'll need to actually put out some sort of original content. I'll have to maybe the thing I'd like to do is do the occasional interview with a creator, but figuring out when I'd have the time and then working around somebody else's schedule, I don't know when that will actually happen, but that's something I'd like to do. If I was doing YouTube full time, that's something that would be a priority. I've got ideas, and I used to do a lot of interviews with celebrities when I did a podcast back in the day. I did a podcast for several years about genre TV type shows, and every week I'd interview a writer or an actor or a director or stuntman, special effects guy, whatever. I got to interview Stan Lee. I got to interview George R. R. Martin. I got to interview all sorts of great people. It was really interesting. But I'd love to do that for comics. Do a real deep dive. Someday. Someday. Point Break 2. A fourth of the way there. Well, that's cool. What was Mr. Lee like? Oh, it was great talking to Stan. He was funny. He was polite and charming. He was a really funny guy. Yeah. It was definitely a privilege to get to sit down and interview him for a while. Get to know him. He seemed happy, That's all I can say. He seemed to like that stuff, getting interviewed and that. So, good for him. I really wish I could have super chat, but I have 4 kids. But when and if, you would definitely be the first. Oh, well, that's kind. Don't worry about it. I don't need it. It's always lovely when someone's that kind, but I definitely am not asking for it. I'm a-okay. How's the fan art going? It's going all right. See for yourself. Interviews would be great. Yeah, I hope I can do that sometime. Have you ever seen Better Call Saul? I love Better Call Saul. I think it's one of the best TV shows on right now. Yeah, I was a huge fan of Breaking Bad too. That's one of the best shows I ever saw. The fan art for my channel? Oh, it's fine. Got plenty of it. The next episode that comes out, I'll have a bunch of pieces to share. So, that's cool. We doing good. Appreciate everybody joining me tonight. This is really fun to get back into having conversations and just sort of doodling about, talking comics and such. I like it. I like it a lot. I like talking to all of you. Appreciate everybody's support watching the episodes. I'll tell you one thing that's like not awesome about like when your channel starts having a video that explodes in popularity. You get offers just from everywhere, and they're all dumb. Like, just people like just don't like watch your channel, but they're like, hey, want to review my music? It's like, what? No, I don't. I'm not going to review your music on my channel. Like, where'd that come from? You get stuff like that just constantly. It's kind of annoying. It's obnoxious. Did I watch the Seattle Dragons game? No, I was working, but that said, we did have it playing on like the big TV that like customers can watch. So I caught like a few minutes of it. It's interesting. I love football, so I would be curious to see what the level of gameplay is like in the XFL. My suspicion is there's not enough talent for it to be really close to what professional football is, in the NFL, but maybe it's up there with college. I don't know. I'd be very curious to see if that's the case or not. I don't know. They need better quarterbacks. I'm not surprised. I mean, there's barely enough good quarterbacks for just the NFL. So, like, the idea that, like, another league could have access to a bunch of talented quarterbacks. It's like, where would they be coming from? And that's just because football not that popular outside of America. Like, so American football specifically, obviously, like what we call soccer and everybody else calls football. Yes, popular everywhere around the world. Let's see if this is the right color. Yeah, it's a little light. Picked up Symbiote Spider-Man a while back, and it was great. Peter David hasn't lost his touch. Well, that's good. Football is really popular in England, but it's super expensive for the NFL to host games there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's usually like one game, maybe 2 games a season that they broadcast over there, but it's just something I can't see how they could ever make it work. Like the time zone difference, like the that would just be killer if like a team every week had to be flying out there. That would just be tough. That would be really, really tough. I don't see how that would work. NFL Europe. Yeah, I remember that. It was okay. An art channel I watched proved unscientifically that vodka and pigments can be used to refill Copics. I've heard that like it's, because it's alcohol based, but I don't know. I don't know if I'd love the drawing. What's the character again? This is called an alley viper, version 2 of an alley viper. The previous one that the GI Joe line had was orange. They were into bright colors at this point. I believe this was the 90s when this character was released, and the characters tended to be very brightly colored. They weren't too realistic military guys anymore. That's okay. Some people grew up with them, and that's what they like. Anyway, I think that basically will do it for the artwork that I'm going to draw tonight. And I appreciate everybody joining me, but I can take questions for a little while because I'm not in a huge rush or anything. Have I read the original Spider-Man 2099 run? I did read that back in the day. I read all the 2099 books, and Spider-Man 2099 was one of the better ones. Could I do an episode on Von Bodie? Yeah, I always could. It's possible. No plans right now, but it's possible. That looks more realistic than the neon orange and blue 80s version. I think I prefer, this guy. I prefer this version. Just realized that what I could do is add a little bit of shading and nuance to some of the colored parts as well. But, I may have actually had this guy. May have been one of the last figures that I ever got, because I was definitely out of collecting them by then, but I may have just bought it on a whim, because he's pretty familiar, and I'm pretty sure I had him. I did an episode back in the day that reviews a comic book that came with him, so I know at the time I sort of did my research and figured out everything I could remember about him. Right now, off the top of my head, I'm not necessarily remembering. Is Neal Adams nuts or trolling? I think he's a little bit nuts. I legit do. But he's talented. He's a good artist. He's just a little weird. The noise in the background. I've got a filtered water stream here for my cat. I have a few 80s G.I. Joe figures, but I mostly got generic military dudes in the late 90s and early 2000s. Oh, okay. Have I seen the new Lock and Key? I saw the first episode. It was okay. I didn't love it. I was hoping for a more literal translation, and I always found the comic books closer to gothic horror. The show, at least in the first episode, felt a little bit more like young adult, action adventure type stuff. I was hoping for it to be a little scarier. We'll see. You missed my face cam. Well, I'll try to get my computer up and running. Couldn't get my computer running today, so I'm just running this off of my iPhone. Any interest in Denny O'Neil, Joshua Dysart, or Valiant Comics? I have plans for eventually covering Valiant and Denny O'Neil. I'll have to think about Josh Dysart. I have not listened to the band Ghost. That is not something I'm familiar with. Sorry, I'm not even sure what kind of music they are. But that's my cat. Let's see if he wants to be on camera. You want to be on camera real quick, buddy? I'm gonna hold him upside down under the camera for a moment. Let's see. Will you let go of me? Here he comes. You're gonna get a cat right in front of you. You looking around? That's Milo. That's my buddy Milo. Oh, he's kissing me right now. He's licking me all over. Oh, what a good kitty. What a good kitty. I should review the early Marvel comics. Yeah, maybe someday I will talk more about Atlas or Timely. That's definitely a possibility. Definitely something that would interest me. We'll see. I've got a lot of ideas for episodes. I've got a lot. But I will also always, like, at least once a quarter, put out a poll to my patrons at the $2 and above level, so that, like, they can have a little bit of say. And if you're a patron and you, like, make a comment about what I should, consider making for an episode, I definitely take stuff like that into account strongly. So right now they're voting on an indie comic, the next indie comic I should review, because I like to review a little bit of everything. So just know that that's out there. But no obligation. I'll still put the show out for everybody no matter what. I'm going to take off now. Did Milo go to college? No. Milo needs his education. But it was good talking to everybody. I'm going to take off now. Thank you very much, and I will see you very soon. Expect the new comic tropes very, very soon.